Hi, everybody. Today is Wednesday, September 17th, 2025, and our friend Laith Marouf from Beirut is back with us. Welcome back, Laith.
Good to be with you, Nima.
Please subscribe and hit the like button to help us reaching more people. And if you look at the picture of Laith, right below his name, you can find the address, the URL to go and support Free Palestine that video. And you have channel on X and YouTube. What else?
We're
They
on Instagram, we're on Telegram, we're on Rumble. So we're doing everything just in case we get blocked somewhere. You can find us somewhere else.
great. Leith, let me start with a question that I ask our audience as well. There is a poll going on this live. I ask people, is Israel Yemenizing the Middle East, in your opinion? When I'm talking about Yemenizing, I'm talking the way that Israel is bombing Yemen and the way that Yemen is responding to Israel. There is no other option for Yemen but fighting back. Your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, in a way, the Zionists are most emboldened right now because they're getting away with genocide in Gaza. They're getting away with mass occupation of Syrian land and mass ethnic cleansing of the Syrians that live in the lands that they've just now occupied. I think it's almost 350,000 people that have been expelled from the areas that Israel just occupied in South Syria. It still kills every day in Lebanon. In fact, today is the anniversary of the terrorist pager attack, where almost 3,000 people were injured. There was, of course, luckily, 30 something, 38 people were killed only in that mass terrorist attack. So clearly, the Zionists are emboldened, and they think that they can hit anywhere in the world and kill any civilians or anyone they wish anywhere on the planet, and that the West will bend backwards to accommodate it. Yes, the only way to defend yourself against the Zionists is to fight back. If in any shape or form you look weak, they will be attacking. And these are monsters, and they have, internationalized the law of the jungle. Now is the international law. The law of the jungle is international law, meaning, survival of the strongest. So yes, in a way, Yemen, Palestine, Gaza, Lebanon, Syria is the model now that the Zionists have implemented globally, and the only response to them is that of Yemen, for sure, of the Palestinian resistance, of the Lebanese resistance. That's the only way to deal with them, the same way Iran dealt with the Zionist column.
After the attack on Doha, Donald Trump called the Emir of Qatar and said that there would be no more attacks on their soil. And hours later, Netanyahu came out and said, and we're going to do it again and again until we get the target. Doesn't matter where they are and in which country they are, we're going to attack them. How when I ask about Yemen, I think the situation in other countries is not that much different. I would, if I were to believe one of these two, Donald Trump or Netanyahu, I would believe Netanyahu because Donald Trump is changing each and every day, each and every minute, he's changing his rhetoric. And we know he was negotiating with Iran and attacked Iran. He was negotiating with Hamas and they attacked the negotiations room. People need to know that. How What's going on in your opinion when you see the summit in Qatar? You see Iran and Syria going to that summit. I have never thought that these two countries going to go to the same event. It was far from my sort of thinking. But what is going on in the Middle East that would bring these two together, at least to sit on a table and to talk about an issue that is important for all of them?
Yeah, on the point of Trump and Netanyahu, their speeches there, it's clear that Netanyahu has been telling us since the beginning of this genocide what he wants to do, and he's open about it. So he told us he's gonna try to destroy Hamas, and he's doing it. He said he's gonna occupy Gaza, and he's doing it. Doesn't mean he's gonna succeed. He says he's going to attack all the axis of resistance and attack Hamas anywhere, kill them anywhere, and he's doing it. And he says he's working towards a greater Israel, and he's doing it. So Netanyahu is very truthful since October 7th. He's so blunt about what he wants to do, and he is delivering on it. He's not hiding anything. The problem is that the media in the West is hiding what he's saying, or trying to say, "Oh, it's just stop." I don't know. Everything that Netanyahu said he wants to do, he is doing. On the other hand, Trump is just playing media all the time, and much of his public appearances, there's careful insertion of buzzwords that create a distraction from the reality. So it's a different kind of a political actor. Obviously, Netanyahu, for decades before October 7th, was a big liar and would be two-faced, just like Trump was and is. But Netanyahu is very clear about what he wants to do. He's openly saying he's going to genocide the Palestinians. There will be no Palestinian state. He's ethnically cleansing the West Bank right now, and as we see, killing people all around the world as he wishes. Now, about this summit in Qatar that brought together the Arab League and the Islamic Nations Organization. I mean, I think Iran was hoping that maybe the attack on Qatar will awaken the leadership in these countries somehow, and that's because Iran is diplomatic. It's also thinks in a pragmatic way. In my opinion, obviously, and I think I'm correct in this assessment, given that the only thing that came out of this summit is regular condemnations of the Zionist colony that have been repeated for decades. So clearly there will be no action from either Qatar or the other Gulf states. When we compare that to how the Arab League, launched a war in support of the Saudis against Yemen just a few years ago, that included the joining of the Jordanian, Moroccan, Emirati, Egyptian Air Force to attack Yemen. Now we see none of these states offering this. And there's clear statements even from the Emirates that they will be not joining any violent action against the Zionists for the attack on Qatar. So I think Iran wanted to be there, not because of what the outcome would be and or how it looks like sitting on the same table with the HTS regime in Syria, but to speak to the wider Arabic and Muslim public that we're watching this moment, and we're hoping that somehow there's Arab unity or Muslim unity. And Iran didn't want to look like it's the one that's standing outside ruining the party. It arrived. The representatives of Iran spoke in very strong terms, offered support militarily to any state in the region, including weapons to Qatar if it wants to. And that was the main reason I think Iran was there. Obviously, the Qataris are not going to take any Iranian military aid. They're occupied by the Americans. And they will continue just talking. So, I wouldn't take the image of the HTS regime and Iran together on the same in the same room as significant. But behind the scenes, obviously, Iran is dealing with the realities in Syria. It's trying to minimize the damage that HTS could do if it's in full conflict with the axis of resistance, the damage that it could do to Lebanon, the damage that it could do to Iraq. And therefore, Iran is very careful not to fully antagonize the HTS regime in Syria because of how that could destabilize other countries in the region.
Laith, what we know about the Middle East is the position of Yemen together with Iran, Lebanon, I'm talking about Hezbollah, and the axis of resistance. You look at the way it was before that some sort of conflict between Yemen and Saudi Arabia. The United States was on the part of Saudi Arabia and helping Saudi Arabia to bomb Yemen and fight in Yemen. That doesn't exist anymore. They're getting closer. What is happening in the Middle East, after all, when you look at the curve, their position is getting closer to the position of Yemen and Iran. Yemen and Iran are not moving toward their position. They're getting closer to the other side. And don't you think that's a huge change in the Middle East?
Look, the world is changing, okay? Definitely the United States power is collapsing. It's becoming more violent, but its ability to control international events is waning. The Zionist colony hasn't won any war. It killed a lot of people, a lot of innocent civilians, and is continuing to do so in Palestine, in Lebanon, in Syria, in Iraq, Iran, Yemen, and Qatar, of course. But it will take a lot more for these regimes that have been in a symbiotic existence with the British and then American imperial power since their manufacturing by the British. Maybe they will have to see America leaving the region before they flip. These are regimes that haven't, honestly, the attack on Qatar is the first attack on any Gulf monarch by the Zionists since the beginning of the Zionist project in the 1880s.
Exactly.
Okay. I mean, almost every other Arabic state, including Algeria and Tunis and Sudan, were attacked by the Zionist colony throughout the decades. Okay, it's not, the only countries that were not attacked by the Zionist colony up until now were the Gulf monarchs and Morocco. Those the Arabic states we're talking about. So this is yes, it's a first of a kind, but it will take a lot more to change the behavior of these states, and it may be that it's too late by that point. When the American presence in the region wanes and the United States, withdraws its troops, the delayed Arabic revolts in these monarchies that have been delayed for 80 years will be triggered naturally. Those states cannot exist in the form they are without the constant military intervention and intelligence security intervention of the West to maintain these monarchies in place. So I know most of the world wishes that there is progress on this file, that there's changes, that somehow these elites will wake up to their own, the betterment of their own societies. But I mean, I personally can't expect these elites to change when we don't even see change like this in Western societies, where supposedly there's democracy and so on, and the majority of the populace wants an end to the genocide. And the elites there are harming themselves in the UK, in Canada, in France, in Germany. They're harming themselves. They're harming their trade with the rest of the world. They're harming their reputation. They're harming their cultural industries, their food, everything. Okay, everybody's now sick and tired, not only of Israel, but the whole West. And those elite are willing to harm their own nations in Europe than to cut relations with the Zionist colony or end the support, military support to it. So I cannot expect the Arab vassals, the Arabic vassals, to act more rational than the European vassals.
On the day of summit, we've learned, and the day after, we've learned that Israel is bombing Damascus. And they were bombing Damascus, and on daily basis, they're bombing the southern part of Lebanon. They've bombed 12 fighter jets. They bombed Yemen. And the situation, Laith, with Turkey is somehow much more complicated, in my opinion, because Turkey has something at stake in Syria. They try to deal with Israel, but Israel is not that willing to let the way that Turkey wants, at least some part of the whole strategy of Israel is somehow balkanizing Syria, dividing Syria in regions, which doesn't seem to be the policy of Turkey. How do you see that?
Yeah, like a couple of weeks ago, Turkey announced that it stopped all shipping to the Zionist colony. Well, actually, that was a lie. Right now, we know that all these ships are going to Greece first and then shipping to the Zionist colony. That actually there was not even any slowing down of shipping between Turkey and the Zionist colony. So it's, I wish actually the Turkish people would be as vigilant as the Greek people are. Look, there's Greek dock workers that are refusing to, service ships that are going to the Zionist colony. There's Greek civilians blockading the cruise ships that are coming from the Zionist colony. Well, where is the Turkish version of this? And there is supposedly a lot of opposition to Erdogan and his policies in the country. There's a lot of groups, including Muslim branded kind of groups that are involved in the flotilla, for instance, that's going right into Gaza from Turkey. Why aren't they doing action in their own country to change this reality of Erdogan collaborating with the Zionists? Look, Syria is occupied by the Zionists, by Turkey, by the United States, by the Kurds. And every one of those groups has their sphere of influence, and they are cutting up the pie between them. If the Zionists manage to create enclaves in the south of Syria that are separated, become a Balkanized kind of state, maybe this actually will help Erdogan. See, Erdogan wants to take over the coast of Syria and Aleppo region. Okay, they have actual claims, they have maps that claim that Turkey, Aleppo region and the coast is supposed to be part of Turkey. Okay, so he doesn't care. He knows that the Americans have the oil and the gas of the east of Syria as their own piece of the pie, and so he's not going to challenge the Americans for that. The only thing that is valuable in the south of Syria is the water. Okay, and the big city of Damascus. So until now, the Zionists don't want to take Damascus. Okay, so maybe they'll give him this Aleppo to Damascus and the coast, and the rest goes to the Israelis and the Americans, and he will be fine with it, because the Americans are offering Erdogan to crown himself as the king of the Turkic peoples, the Sultan of the Turkic peoples, not the new Ottoman Sultan. They're offering him to go and have say in Azerbaijan, in Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, all the way to Xinjiang, the Uyghur lands, right? This is where his next 10 years project and future is directed. So I don't think Turkey will have any problem with Israel either.
We've learned that how important Cyprus is for Israel during the war between Iran and Israel. And I know Cyprus, specifically the northern part of Cyprus. Right now, there is a conflict going on between Turkey and Greece, and they're talking about the two-state solution for Cyprus. The only Turkish government says that the only solution would be two-state solution. I don't know how much of what's going on in Cyprus is related to the situation between Turkey and Israel, and how much the Israeli government, how much leverage do they have on the situation in Cyprus. Because if that's a second front for Israel to confront Turkey, making more trouble, more conflicts in order to bring some sort of chaos, how do you see that? Do you think that, because in my opinion, those people who went to Cyprus, most of them went to the southern part of Cyprus, because the northern part is Turkish people, the culture is Muslim, and that's why I'm somehow suspicious about what's going on in Cyprus as well.
Yeah, there's a big buyout of land in Cyprus and homes by the Zionist colonists over the last year and a half. And there's even whole neighborhoods that are Jewish only. They're gated and you cannot enter. So there is already apartheid inside the south of Cyprus, the Greek Cypriot section. Obviously, it's important to remember that the Turkish occupation of North Cyprus was supported by NATO and the West as a punishment to Greece when Greece was ruled by the socialist after the fascist control at the end of World War II. And it's also important to remember that there's a lot of Arabic Cypriots that were ethnically cleansed from Cyprus by the Ottomans at the end of World War I. And there's still some of them living there, and they speak Arabic with a kind of a Greek accent. Much of them are Greek Orthodox Syrians, basically. And that Cyprus has it's the first history of Cyprus as having any statehood was part of the Phoenician Empire, along with the island of Arwad across from Syria. So there's more to think about why the Zionists want to colonize the south of Cyprus that is actually in alignment with Turkey and its objective than against it. And the main thing is that the Greek population overwhelmingly is pro-Palestinian, but also is much more radical in their pro-Palestinian positionality than the Turkish people. That's for sure, 100%. Look at, we just mentioned those actions what that's happening in Greece, that there's nothing like it in Turkey, although Turkey is a Muslim country. And so I think Israel would rather that Cyprus is turned into a Jewish and Turkish colony than having any Greeks there or Arabs, which will be also expelled, the remainders of them that are there, as this process continues. And in fact, the Turkish state, when it was looking for oil and gas in the Mediterranean, in the Eastern Mediterranean, it ruffled everybody's feathers, had a fight with everybody about the plots that supposedly belong to it or not, including Egypt, including Lebanon, Syria, Libya, Palestine, Greece, and Cyprus, the Greek Cyprus. But they didn't have any problems with any of the claims that the Israelis had, which were encroaching on also Cypriot and Lebanese and Egyptian territorial waters. So it's hard to not it's hard to conclude anything different than that once you see the actions and the history of these actions. Like, it's sometimes easy to get confused when we look at these events, these news events, out of their historical context. And that's where propaganda works. This dependence on people not knowing history. And so it's very important that when we talk about any location in the world, not only this region here, that we look at the history, the long-term history, and the actors in this history and their patterns of behaviors, so as not to get confused by the momentary news item and propaganda that is related to it.
I think what has happened in Syria is putting a lot of pressure on Turkey the way that they haven't seen before. They don't know how to deal with it. That's why and they're trying to do something that they're trying to, in my opinion, they're trying to compromise with Israel, but Israel is not willing to compromise with them. That's why we had the Israeli Minister of Diaspora Affairs. He said that new axis of evil is Qatar, Turkey, and Syria. There has to be something there that they're not talking about Iran and Yemen. These are the worst enemy of Israel. They're talking about new countries. Before Syria, before what's going on in Syria, what has happened with the fall of the Assad regime government, we thought that everything gonna be solved. They're gonna do something in Syria that would somehow benefit all of them, but it doesn't seem that would be the case. That's why they're somehow fighting each other.
Yeah, and there's another way to look at it, which is, look, the defeat of the Assad government, the fall of the Assad government, the capture of Syria, the killing of the leadership of Hezbollah, the genocide being committed in Gaza for 2 years, the back and forth war between Iran and the Zionist colony and the Yemen and the Zionist colony have now, before the fall of Syria, the Qatar-Turkey axis, the Ikhwani axis, and the Wahhabi axis were claiming that the axis of resistance are just abusing the Palestinian cause, that they use the Palestinians to stay in power, that they have no intention of helping or sacrificing for Palestine, and that they'll leave the Palestinians die by themselves while they're killing the axis of resistance, quote unquote, killing Sunnis in Iraq and Syria and so on. That was the propaganda before October 7th. October 7th destroyed this propaganda because all the axis of resistance sacrificed the most important things that they have. Syria sacrificed its whole self. The Lebanese resistance sacrificed its best and the leadership of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah. Iran sacrificed its leadership also, president and others that were killed, and maybe they don't want to admit it, but they were. Yemen bombarded. Okay, so now there's no more propaganda about axis of resistance killing Sunnis. So how is the leaders of the vassal states like Qatar, like Turkey, like Saudi Arabia are going to now be able to convince their own masses for a reason why they're not fighting for the liberation of Palestine? Okay, they were claiming before they have a war with the Shias that are killing Sunnis, and they need to defeat them before they go to liberate Palestine. That was the words of HTS leadership itself, right? Okay. Well, supposedly now the Shia are defeated. Supposedly, okay. There is no more Sunni majority country that is ruled by Shia. Okay. There's no more oppression according to them. I'm not saying that there was oppression of Sunnis in Syria, but there's none of that. So how can they justify to their own that they're not fighting back? So they need Israel to attack Qatar. They need Israel to say that Qatar and Turkey and HTS are the new axis of evil, to give them cred, street cred, to make them look like they are going to fight Israel, that they're somehow enemies of Israel, that Israel is scared of them, when in reality they're not. When in reality, Israel cannot survive without the aid of HTS, which is handing over all the weapons of the Syrian government and fighting any Syrian that could threaten Israel on the southern borders of Syria. They cannot survive without the non-stop supplies coming through Turkey. And the money of Qatar that is being spent on stabilizing the Syrian HTS regime and or other regimes that are pro-Western, Israel cannot exist without them. So it's just propaganda to give street cred to Qatar, Turkey, and HTS when they are the best buddies and friends with benefits of the Zionists.
The new comment on the part of officials in Gaza, they're talking about 1 million Palestinians reject displacement from northern part of Gaza because they're trying to, it seems that to displace them from northern part to the southern part, then do something with that. And what is the conditions in the northern part of Gaza, Laith? What do we know about that?
Yeah, over the last few hours, the internet was cut off from all of the north of Gaza. That includes Gaza City. So internet traffic is down to half what it was, which means the Zionists are embarking on a mass killing spree. They targeted specifically the cables of the internet and the distribution junctions earlier this morning before they embarked on a mass invasion of Gaza City. They are sending all these drone APCs, old armored vehicles that have drone mechanisms in them, and they're full of explosives, and they're pushing them. There's at least 20 since the morning pushed into the neighborhoods and then exploded between the buildings. This is above and beyond the targeting of all the high-risers. So right now we're entering the most bloody part of the genocide up until now. Many people are refusing to leave, not only because they want to stay in their land and homes, but because there's no other place to go to. Right now, the kind of monopoly on transportation that is happening, there's all these people that are asking for $3,000 to take you in a car from Gaza City to the south, which is like a 20-minute drive. $3,000. Okay, so people don't have money. We see the thousands of people that were marching out on their feet to the south. Many died on the way, by the way. This is not even counted, it seems like, in the deaths of the war. And even though all of this is happening, up until now, the resistance is still fighting back. This invasion of Gaza City, even if it's emptied, the city of its inhabitants, will take months to capture. Look at what happened in smaller towns in Gaza, whether it's Dir al-Balah or Jabalia or others. It took months to capture those small towns. And this is not going to be easier. And I think the part of attack in Qatar was to distract attention from the reality. Look, those same goddamn leaders from Arabic and Muslim countries that were gathered in Doha didn't peep a word about what's happening in Gaza, didn't put a resolution about Gaza. They were more interested in the optics of defending Qatar as a very rich country than with the what now people are saying is 600, maybe 800,000 dead Palestinians in Gaza. So, the genocide is going to accelerate, and the resistance is going to continue. We'll see which one breaks first. Is it Zionist as a state, the Zionist state and colony? Would it collapse internally, the pressure outside before the finality of this genocide? That's something that I don't think anyone can answer now.
And we learned that Israel bombed Gaza's only specialized children's hospital. And what is the situation with the hospitals, Laith? Most of these people who are injured, who are somehow damaged, the situation, they're getting more, injuries, and all of this, the destruction that is happening is causing a lot of casualties. How are they going to be treated? Is there any sort of condition to get out of Gaza, or they have to treat them inside Gaza?
I think the Jordanians were taking injured people to be treated in Jordan. They stopped that a while ago. And the worst thing about that Jordanian program was that after they treated those children and wounded adults, Palestinians, they sent them back to Gaza. Imagine that you're being treated for amputation or something in Jordan, and then they tell you, "Oh, you're healthy now. We're going to send you back to the killing field." It's almost more cruel than leaving those people to die in Gaza. It's more cruel. And it's only so Jordan can feel good about itself, or the Jordanian state can lie to its people to say that it's doing something. Such cruelty. That happened also with the Egyptian state. And as we see, injured children that were being brought to the US now are banned from entering the US, and injured children from Gaza, because of the Zionist lobbying. And I wonder if those children made it to the United States and got treated, would they have been also expelled back to Gaza to die? The situation of the hospitals is desperate, I think. I read every day the accounts from these hospitals, and I don't think any hospital in Gaza City has any anesthetics left. So much of the surgeries are right now being conducted without anesthesia, and specifically amputations right now are increasing. There's not much medicine to deal with the wounds, so they're having to amputate, and those amputations are happening without anesthetic. So suffering is increasing. And the attack that you mentioned about the Gaza Children's Hospital, I think something like 30 kids and their companions that are in the hospital were killed in this attack. 30 kids and companions and medical workers. I don't know, I haven't memorized the breakdown of that. And many families just ran away with their children who need 24-hour treatment to survive. Many of these children have cancer and or other chronic diseases. So those children and their families that left because of this attack have very low chance of survival for long. And the other hospitals are being attacked also. This is now a norm almost every day, multiple attacks on hospitals. And I don't think the media even cares to report it anymore because it's such a normal situation.
After 2 years of the situation in Gaza, finally, UN is talking about genocide, and the case of Gaza is genocide. How is that going to help Gazans, Palestinians, in your opinion?
Yeah, the first response to that was the Secretary General of the United Nations, Guterres, refusing to call it genocide. So if the United Nations Human Rights Council and special investigators and every branch of the UN all came to the conclusion that this is a genocide, and the Secretary General that represents this organization is still refusing until the Security Council, says so. I don't, it shows you how almost irrelevant this label is now. Because everybody on this planet knew that it was a genocide, and before this declaration, and many organizations that are specialized in human rights and so on in the planet already declared it a genocide. So those who refuse to call it a genocide will not be convinced by this or deterred from their genocide denialism by this statement, because there's no weight behind it. There's another thing is that, remember the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, issued preliminary decisions at the request of South Africa and the other applicants in the genocide case against the Zionist colony in January 2024. They had issued a recommendation for the Security Council and the United Nations General Assembly to stop this genocide. South Africa and what we call the Hague Group with it were fooled at the time, if you remember, with Biden claiming that there's ceasefire coming, and so we should not vote on this at the UN or the Security Council to make this into a fact. But then South Africa and the Hague Group didn't follow up. I mean, okay, maybe you got fooled the first time. I mean, to me, and I'm not a state governor or so on, but I know that when America opens its mouth, it's lying all the time. So, but let's say the diplomats in South Africa wanted to follow the United States till the end of the bridge. Let's see where they go. Well, they have known now that the United States is gonna not bring a ceasefire or end to the genocide. So South Africa and the Hague Group should bring back this vote on the recommendations and emergency injunction, basically, of the International Criminal Court of Justice to the Security Council if they want actually to force even Guterres as a Secretary General to admit that this is a genocide. And of course, there will be a veto by the United States. So there should be something at the General Assembly where there's no veto. I don't know how long these movements take and how effective they will be, given that the United Nations and its charter are right now as worthless as toilet paper.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Laith, for being with us today. Great pleasure, as always.
Great to be with you, Nima. See you next week.
See you soon. Bye-bye.